Okay, in order to prepare any leather surface, really, you need to clean it. You need to reduce this sheen, which is going to prevent the paint from sticking, or at least hinder it anyway. So what we're going to do is, I've got some acetone. I'm going to put some acetone on this bit of kitchen towel, and I'm going to wipe around. First of all, I'm going to wipe around the edges of it. Make sure that I press quite hard into where the stitching is, just to remove. Make sure it gets in there, and then I'll wipe constantly like that, and you'll see some of the black finish come off, which is ideal, really. So I'll just start that now. Look, I haven't soaked it too much. Okay, so I'm pressing on quite slow, and you can see it's removing the black dye and the surface finish. This is a brand new wallet, so this isn't dirt, it is the factory finish. Try not to scrub it, because you end up actually smearing this back onto the surface. So I'm allowing each swipe, if you like, to dry before I do the next one. You can see there's quite a bit now coming off. And I'll just continue to do this until there's an even matte surface to work on. Then you know you've prepped the surface correctly, and you're good to go then. I normally use this Angelus leather preparer and deglazer, but I run out of it. I can't get any shipped from America due to the restrictions on solvent-based items. I don't seem to be able to get it in the UK either, so I am using acetone as a replacement. This does actually contain acetone anyway, and I've been told by Angelus themselves that acetone is okay to use, but I found that this was a little bit more aggressive and took the shiny finish of the leather off faster and more efficiently, really. So I would like to use this, but I have been kind of restricted to the acetone, which I used prior to my knowledge of this anyway. So acetone is okay. Right, okay, I've prepared the front surface of this. Might not be able to tell too much difference. There's quite a bit of sheen on the surface I haven't cleaned, and then this one's a little bit more matte. So I think this is good enough to make a start. Okay, so far I've cut some sections out of my stencil, and then I'm going to airbrush lightly just to map out the image, and then I'll just keep going until I've nibbled away at the stencil and given myself a good area to work from, using the brush and airbrush afterwards. So this is just initially planning the face out, and then it's freehand and brushwork after this. So now in my airbrush I'm using Angelus white paint mixed 1 part paint to 3 parts of their too thin reducer, and that's transparent enough and reduced enough really to give me a nice kind of light stencil coverage. So I'm just going to line this up. I think that's about right. Just very light sweeps, nothing, don't want the paint puddling on the surface or anything. If you getting a bit of tip dry. If you feel that the paint's not flowing properly, just check the tip dry on your needle. Not after anything too heavy, just a light mapping out of the face. Don't press too hard on the surface either, you'll get the paper will start to crease and lift. And hit the surface at 90 degrees so that you're not spraying underneath the stencil. You want to Right, I've just cut a little bit more away. Never cut too much that your stencil starts to fall apart too quickly, but you just want to cut a little bit away, realign it with the previous sections you've cut out, which is pretty easy really, and just keep spraying away until basically there's hardly anything left of your stencil, and then the rest is freehand. I won't cover this whole process, it's quite tedious to be honest. There's going to be about probably eight more of this to and fro-ing, but we'll get there. Okay, this is the stencil section finished. You can see I've gone a little bit heavier on certain areas than others, but that doesn't matter. Now we're just going in with some with the paintbrush, and I'm gonna pick out some of the highlights along here and just kind of rough it out with the paintbrush, and then it's in with the airbrush. For the paintbrush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the paint 1:1 with the to thin reducer, and then I'm not going to load the paintbrush up too much. You don't want too much paint on there, but then I'm just going to, it'll look a bit rough to begin with, but then we'll fill it out with the airbrush. Right, this is for the brush part. Now I'm paying attention to my reference picture, not too closely really, but I'm just going to pick out the kind of lightest areas, and I'm just dabbing on the paint, being very light really, just giving ourselves a rough idea of where the highlights are, just giving a good base for the airbrushing that's going to come after this stage. Going to build the image up slowly so we won't make any mistakes. Try and go in too heavy, there's a chance you might make a mistake and you can't really, a bit harder to recover from that. So we're just going to go nice and light, take your time, just going to build it up. It's much more stress-free doing it this way, and you'll get a nice smooth blended image at the end of the day. So I shall just carry on with this and then get back to you as I've progressed a bit more. So this paint at the moment is thinned equal parts Angelus white and the to thin reducer. Just make sure you don't put too much on the brush. I've hardly got any on the brush now, and I'm just dabbing it on, as you can see. So, and it's going on really nice. Make sure you keep standing back as well. You can't really tell how the image is going if you just keep working close up. Before you know it, you've reworked an area too much. So just keep standing back, you'll get a good idea of how it's all progressing, and you can move on to the next area. So I'll just carry on with this and then get back to you in a minute. Right, this is the brushwork done. It's not exactly finished, but you can see it's very mottled, it's very rough. Some areas I've done a little bit more patchy than others. That doesn't matter, because I'm just going to carry on now. What I'm going to do, and this is just a really rough base, rough underpainting for the rest of the artwork. So what I'll do now is I will continue with this with a brush for a little bit, and I will pick out now, re-pick out the brightest areas of these creases, etc., and kind of pull it all together. Really, it'll be more uniform once I've done this stage, and then it'll be some airbrush, and we'll just the whole thing will just be done with white initially, and then it'll be some black work. Then on top of all that black and white image, we'll be adding some transparent colours and everything. So this is going to be actually going to be in colour. So this is very rough at the moment, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go in again and just, you know, tidy it up, layer upon layer upon layer, and we'll take it from there. Okay, I'm sure you'll agree that's it's coming on. Almost looks like I've sort of done a lot of dot work on it. I've kind of enhanced a lot of the brighter highlights. I mean, the whole process with this, especially on the Hulk, is that I want to try and bring out the sweat on the pores and everything on the skin. So it's not a smooth skin surface anyway, which is great for this technique. So next I'm going to fill the area out with the airbrush, and then it'll be time for black. But I'm really pleased with the way it's going at the moment. Okay, that's the brushwork finished at for this stage anyway. Now I'm going to pull it all together with the airbrush, paying attention to the highlights, the brightest areas of his forehead and everywhere else that I've concentrated on. I'm just going to round everything out now with the airbrush, and it'll pull it all together. Going in very light. Probably going to get a bit tip dry. Always have a bit of paper handy, taped next to where you're working, so you can just give it a quick blast. So I'll carry on with this, get back to you when I've got a little bit further. Right, I think you'll agree that it's the airbrush has brought everything, sort of knitted it all together, and made it look slightly more 3D anyway. So it's now time for some black, introduce some shadow to it, make some crisp detail as well, and then after that layer on some transparent colours. So the underpainting is obviously initially in black and white, and that allows the highlights and the shadows to show through the colours layered on top. So pleased with the way it's going at the moment, mainly because there's a lot of detail in the reference photo as well, which is nice. So yeah, it's certainly sort of brought it together, and you can see the images come becoming more realistic anyway. So black next, then colour. Okay, I'm moving in with the black now. You can see I've already started. It's nice to get some contrast in the image now. What I'm doing is I'm mixing some of the paint with quite a bit of the to thin reducer, and I'm using that as a transparent black to add some shadow to this with my brush, and then with a dry brush I'm dabbing it out. You don't want too much on your brush. There's not much going on there at all, really. Then a dry brush that I'm holding in my mouth, I'm just blending this paint out while it's still wet. And then what I'll do after this, I'll start using the airbrush with black just to fade certain areas out. But the brush is nice to get some detail shadowing at the same time. So I'll carry on with this, and we'll catch up in a minute. Right, that's not all the brushwork finished on the black, I don't think, but I'm just going to introduce the airbrush now. Got some very thin black. I've actually reduced this with the too thin reducer, but I've added a little bit of water as well. It just seems to make it flow a little bit easier. So I'm just going to blend out very lightly some of the harsher sort of lines that I put in. This is where the airbrush really comes into its own on this kind of stuff. Can't imagine doing it with any other bit of equipment and getting the same sort of results, really. You do get a really nice fade out. As I'm fading out the edges of the brushwork, I'm pulling back as well. I'm getting further from the surface. So that I get a wider fade, really. It's flowing nicely as well, especially when you mix it with just a little bit of water. Fade out the shadows really nicely as well. Because it's transparent, it's still allowing those highlighted brush strokes we've got underneath to show through. Just going to get a bit of tip dry off. Until I was getting tip dry because nothing coming out, basically. There we go. Put it back on. Obviously it goes dark as you want with this, just layering it on. Don't want to cover up too much of what I've previously done. Well, it kind of defeats the point of doing an underpainting, but not too strict on what I'm following from the reference image. It's my interpretation at the end of the day, I suppose. So I'll carry on with this and get back to you when I've got a little bit further. Okay, there's a little bit of glare off the lights, but I think you can see that I've kind of we've added some contrast now with a very reduced black. I think what I'm going to do now, because when you fog over the whole face with, when you're blending out your blacks with the airbrush, you do tend to cover up some of the really bright highlights. So I'm just going to go in with some white with a brush, reintroduce those highlights, and then I think I'm going to start introducing some colour. You'll notice obviously I haven't started on the hair yet, so sometimes I kind of do the whole portrait at this stage, including the hair. This time I've just decided to leave the hair till a bit later on anyway. So it's I'll put some highlights back in and then we'll carry on. Okay, I've reintroduced some of the highlights. It's kind of punched everything back out again now, which is really good. So I think now I'm just going to basically layer over some transparent green, and it'll be brush and airbrush. It'll be transparent enough. I'm gonna add the Angelus neutral, which is basically a clear paint. There's nothing to it, so that'll create a really transparent paint, and we should show everything underneath it. Should show through the layers, which is why we've done this underpaint in the first place. So that's what I'll do next. I'll start to add some colour. This is brushed on. It's light green, and it was thinned out with the neutral, so it's a very transparent paint, and I just brushed it on, be quite liberal with it really. As you can see, all the underpainting showing through, and what I'll do next is I'm going to add some shadows. I've gone over the highlights around here. This is white. It's almost pure white around the lips and everything, but I've just decided just to go over the whole lot, and then I can add my highlights again, because you do want some of the green still to show through the little bits that I'm dabbing on. So it's all about it's a lot of detail on this. So I mean, the green's not right at the moment because this is just still an underpainting, so to speak. So I'll layer different greens on top of this, and perhaps even a little bit of blue at some point. The colours aren't really showing exactly true as to what I've got on the video here, but I'll get back to you when I've added some more different shades to this. Now I appreciate it's not that easy to see on the video really, but I've started to airbrush some dark green. It's almost a bluey kind of green around into the shadows and everything, and the overspray of that is actually going on top of the underpainting, the kind of yellowy lime green that I've put on, and that's given me a really nice green that I'm kind of after. It was a mistake, to be honest, but you know, I mean, you see different pictures of the Hulk, and he is depicted in different greens, to be honest. So I'm not after the exact green, you know. I'm just giving it my best shot really. So so the dark green is giving me a really nice green over the rest of it. So what I'll do is I'll concentrate on the dark areas with the airbrush, and the overspray of that will create a really nice green for me, and then I'll pick out the highlights. Might go in with some actual mix a little bit of blue into the green to make it even darker, and we'll take it from there. Right, it's this dark green, and I added some navy blue to the dark green as well to make it even darker. That's made a big difference to the whole tone of the face. So I'm really pleased with the way this is turning out now. Need to go in a little bit kind of underneath the eyebrow and a couple of areas, but then because I've kind of flattened it all out now, because I've airbrushed over the highlights, as soon as I start to put white in here, you'll see it just pop, and it will burst out. It'll look much better. I also need to introduce some colour into the lips and the teeth. Teeth were quite yellowy actually, and as you can see, I've made just a basic start on the hair. So I'm just going to go in with some of the shadow areas a little bit more, and then I'll start adding some colour in different areas. Well, as you can see on the right hand side, I've started to introduce some of the highlights and the skin texture again with white. I think you'll agree it's really makes a huge difference to the actual impact of the image. It just brings the whole thing to life. So I've still got around here and around, well, basically I've only done this probably this quarter of the face, but it really does make a difference. Really gives you more of a sense of depth to it. So I'm going to carry on with that. And now I'm going to introduce some. I've add a bit of colour to the lips, but I'm going to introduce some colour to the teeth, which is kind of a sort of a yellowy, browny yellowy really. And so I'll get back to you in a minute. Okay, as usual, I thought I might. I've got a little bit carried away myself here, but I'll go through what I've done. I've obviously added detail to the teeth. It's kind of ochre-y, yellowy, stained kind of things going on, so that's just transparent paints. Picked out some highlights. Gone in with the black again in the corner of the mouth just to give that a bit of depth, and picked out a few more highlights around the skin. I've added some dark lines in the creases, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade those out with a little bit of reduced black, so they're not quite so harsh. And then I'm going to detail a bit more with the hair, and then I think what I'm going to do is I might fog in a little bit of like teal or light blue or something in the background just to pull it together. Okay, I've fiddled around with it, tinkered here and there, re-established the highlights again. If you go over those quite a few times, obviously your whites are going to become more and more intense, and his face will look even more and more shiny as you go on. So, and that's what I was after. I was after a really punchy sort of contrasty image. I've gone in with I've kind of blended out the shadows with black just to really make it look like it's quite, the grooves are quite deep, and I'm very pleased with it. Added colour to the teeth. It's always nice to finish off with a few highlights on the teeth and around the gums and everything, just to make everything pop out. Played around with the hair for a little bit. I think we'll leave the hair as it is now. Well, this is it. I'm very happy with this, and I'm just going to leave it as it is. So that was entirely Angelus paints. The great stuff for me that Angelus provide is the too thin reducer and their neutral, which is a clear, basically a clear paint. Both of those, you know, I can use them with a brush for transparent work, or with the reducer you can use it in your airbrush. I find that if I add a little bit of water as well in the airbrush, that helps it flow better. You do get a bit of tip dry, but I mean most of my details with the brush anyway, really. So yeah, I'm really pleased with this, and that's about it. Okay, well here's the finished article. You can see with the glare it's got the satin varnish on it, which evens out the whole image, gives makes the colours a lot richer as well, and just really punches everything out and protects it at the same time. So that's the completed Hulk wallet, and I really enjoyed doing this.